supporting you in your dog parenting journey. The Dynamic Dog Owner with Debbie Potter. Hello and welcome to the Dynamic Dog Owner. If you are a regular listener, you'll know we've had a couple of weeks off where we haven't published an episode because, it's good to have a break and sometimes other things take priority. So we are back to regular weekly podcasts again. If you're playing catch up, you won't have even noticed the little gap. So our topic today is a little bit about having children and young dogs, puppies, dogs with any issues you need to work on when you're out and about, and why I think it's a really good idea to separate out your time together. Obviously, our focus is training families with dogs, people, lifestyle, a pet family dog. And I have dogs. I have had 3 puppies. I have 2 children. And I know firsthand that trying to fit it all in is really tough sometimes, especially when your children are smaller. And we tend to have this kind of idyllic image. When you think about having a dog in your family, you have this wonderful idea that you're going to be wandering lovely country walks, your dog just trotting along beside you looking happy and enjoying life, your kids just being idyllic, wandering along next to you, no arguing, enjoying the fresh air. And it is the idyllic image. It's just all going to suit together beautifully and it's going to be easy. And then you actually get your dog or you go out for a walk with your kids and you go, reality, yes, not quite what we had planned. Because normally your kids are arguing for one, or they're running ahead, or they're dragging their heels. The dog's wanting to go in one direction, the kids are wanting to go and do something else. You and your other half are just like arguing because you're just like, you sort the dog out, no, you sort the kids out. And then you kind of think, why did I decide to get a dog to add into this mix? And obviously, yes, always we see the world through rose-tinted glasses and we always look for the positive and have this rosy image of what our life is going to look like. Sometimes it works, but most of the time there are especially days when you go, this just doesn't work. And then I think that's where we get a little bit overwhelmed by, managing kids, managing dogs and enjoying the things we thought we would enjoy together. And I think in general, I'm sure anyone with a puppy will agree, having a puppy or welcoming a rescue dog into your home is way harder than you ever imagine it to be. It is not an easy task. Majority of people will say, wow, I knew it was going to be tough, but geez, this is hard. Most people have had a child say, God, it's like having a newborn in the house again. For people who haven't had a child, it helps them realise what having a child could be like. It's full on. And so, naturally, our idyllic image doesn't quite suit and reality is quite stressful. And as I say, I've done it 3 times with puppies. No, I was quite lucky when I actually had my children. My dog was a little bit older. He was about 7 or 8, I think, and he was like super chill. And then I welcomed puppies into toddlers. They were about a bit older than that, actually. When I had my first puppy, my girls were 6 and 8. So they were a little bit older. But still, please don't do that. Don't do this. Don't do that. So they still needed a lot of encouragement of how to behave and guidance on how to interact with puppies, not wind him up. And obviously every puppy we've got, they've been a little bit easier. But then I think you also, even if they're a bit older, like our current puppy, he's 3. I say puppy, the latest one, he's 3. So the girls were 10 and 12 when we got him. That sounds about right. And you kind of think at that age, they'd be able to help you a bit more. But of course they don't, because kids are busy doing their own thing. So I think partly what we have to do to kind of get this happy family balance is recognise from day one, whatever you're going to get, whether it's a puppy or an adult rescue dog, that they are going to need a lot of our attention. Because obviously we have to teach them everything they know, interact with the world, how to walk nicely, not bark at stuff, really cool. And it is, busy. But if the family parents don't want the dog, or the responsible adult in the family doesn't want or realise how much hard work it's going to be, naturally it's always going to be a little bit harder. And that no matter how old our kids are, they're never going to give you exactly what you need from a relationship with the dog. A lot of the times children are expected to look after the dog, to feed the dog, to play with the dog. No matter how old your children are, they're always going to need attention. Even when they are supposedly responsible, 15, 16, they still don't want to do it because they're too busy living life. They don't want to have to commit to looking after a dog every day of the week. They might do it once or twice in the week, but not every day. So generally speaking, everybody needs to be on board. But I think parents, if you've got children and dogs, and obviously this is kind of who we're talking about today, I think you have to kind of accept that realistically, your kids aren't going to do anything for your dog. They might do something occasionally, and it's very lovely when they do. But 99.9% of the care is down to the adults. And even with younger kids, if they want to do it, if they want to do the brushing or grooming or whatever, it's always going to need an adult to go over it afterwards, because naturally they're not able to do it to a higher standard. And I find personally that, I think maybe this is just being a parent, I don't know, but you always feel like if you're giving your attention to one, you're not giving it to somebody else. So, if you've got a puppy, you're giving all your attention to puppy, you feel like you're neglecting the kids. If you're giving all your attention to your kids because they need you, then obviously you're neglecting the puppy. And obviously you strive to do everything for everybody, but you can't. You just can't do everything for everybody all the time. And therefore, I think it's where we need to kind of take a step back and look at the situation and go, right, how can I manage this? We know it's going to be tough. We know training a puppy is hard work. We know it takes a long time. And even when they're matured and trained, if they ever are finished training, there's always going to be little hiccups and hiatuses along the way, and suddenly they need more from you or less from you. And I think it's just part and parcel. And obviously, when most kids, when they have a puppy, there's a massive novelty of having a puppy. I mean, there was for me, because I'd never had a puppy before my first one. But they do grow, and it's not like the expectations. Kids probably, I mean, I don't know, my kids never had to ask for a dog because we already had one. So I don't know, this is like a hypothetical situation, but majority of kids are like, oh, I really want a dog because of the person down the street's dog, or my friend's dog, or the dog I've seen on the telly, or a dog I've read about in a book. They have this ideal situation, and they don't see the nitty gritty of behind what needs to be done. And it's more responsibility that they can comprehend, because obviously they're small, and kids' lives change. We think of a dog, you have your dog generally for an average, say, of 10 years. In 10 years, a child grows so much. Sometimes, like, if you get one as a 10-year-old, by the time that dog's adult, they've moved out, or they're at uni or something like that. So this is why I say, everybody has to be on board. And I think that mostly parents have to recognise it's down to them. And obviously, no matter how well behaved your kids are, I mean, I hate the term well behaved. I think that's really annoying, whether it relates to kids or dogs. I just hate the phrase well behaved, because basically it means you don't cause me any hassle. And that's not kind of what it should mean, because people need to cause hassle. My kids cause me hassle. It doesn't mean they're not well behaved. They're freaking amazing, but they're not easy. But they're not naughty or well behaved. Anyway, so no matter what your kids are like, they're always going to need to be kids. They're going to need to run and shout and play and explore. And depending on how old they are, they can't wait and take turns. And that sometimes really contradicts and conflicts against what your dog actually needs. And younger children just aren't able to adapt their behaviour in the same way as an adult would. And then again, it's this clash. I mean, there's a really good book called The Culture Clash. If anyone wants to read it, I can't remember who it's by because I'm rubbish at people's names. Anyone who comes to training will know that I'm terrible with people's names. Dogs' names I remember, but anyway, there's a really good book called The Culture Clash, and it's basically about how our expectations of what we expect a dog to be like in a human world clash with the needs of a dog, and how we actually expect way, way, way too much of them. And a lot of the things we see as being naughty versus well-behaved, the naughty stuff is basically dogs just being a dog, and we need to cut them a bit more slack. Anyway, a little side note there. But obviously, we do have to remember a dog is a dog, and they have their particular needs. And often they do conflict with kids. Kids' behaviours often wind a dog up, especially young puppies. A lot of people would say my young puppy is always worse with my youngest children. Generally because they're fun. They bounce, they squeal, they scream, they do stuff, they're exciting. Puppies want to join in. So naturally, kids' behaviour does influence and affect our dogs more than we probably realise. Less so with teenagers. Obviously, teenagers get a little bit boring. They don't jump and twirl and twirl around, and they're not as exciting. They're a bit more sedentary, aren't they? Love them. But anyway, dogs are obviously, we treat them like humans. They are animals, but they're incredibly intelligent. And I think we sometimes forget how intelligent they are. And we forget that they see things quite black and white. They don't have the range of emotions that humans do. They can't feel guilt, spite, etc. But they learn through consequence. They still feel the big emotions, happiness, excitement, fear, but they learn through consequences and prior experiences, just like our kids do. And I say often there's just a clash between them. And I think that's where a lot of problems come from. So where, we have overexcited puppies, or we have puppies that are jumping up, or whatever it may be, we forget that if you're living with dogs and children, yes, they're quite similar, but they actually have very differing needs, and they do contradict or conflict each other, but also complement each other sometimes. And I think it's just one of those failures. We fail to recognise that our dog won't just fit in, no matter how idyllic we think the image is going to be, no matter how well behaved and perfect your kids are. So no matter how, much your kids say to you, I will do everything for this dog. I will be the best dog carer ever. I'll do it all. I won't need my pocket money ever again because that'll pay for its food. All that stuff. We still have to remember that we still need to, as adults, the people who are responsible, still need to make adjustments and accommodations to our lifestyle. As will children, that we need to make these accommodations to ensure that we have a happy, successful family. I know I've talked about it on the podcast loads, but my middle dog, Rem, is the one that has taught me so much. I adore that dog. When he was a puppy, my kids had to make so many accommodations for him because he had a massive separation attachment issue. To be fair, he still does in a way. We still have to make a lot of accommodations for him, but nowhere near as many as we did when he was young. He had to come everywhere with us, and if the place wasn't dog friendly, we couldn't take him. We couldn't go because he literally couldn't be on his own for a second. And for his first up until he was about 9 months old, he was with us 24/7 to help him. Yes, it was hard work, but it's paid off massively. But my kids had to, put up with stuff, and I'd say, we can't do that because of Rem. But we want to go there. I was like, but we can't take care of him, so we can't. And obviously to begin with, they were a bit like, oh, okay. But after a couple of months, they got a bit bored of it, obviously. And we strived to find as many good places as possible to go to help him. And I had to sit them down and explain. They were, how old were we had Rem? They were probably 8 and 10. Yeah, they were 8 and 10 when we got Rem. So still relatively young, but a little bit older, where they knew, they know what they want to be doing in life. I was like, no, we can't go there because of him. We can't do that because of him. And they were like, oh, this is such a pain. I'm like, I know, but they were old enough that I could sit down and explain to them that we have to give him what he needs to help him grow. And, make the analogies, when you were little, I had to stop doing things to help you, or, there were certain places I couldn't take you, or I had to give you all my attention to make sure that you were happy, safe, secure, and you could grow and be healthy, just like I have to with him. And it taught them a lot about responsibility, a little bit of resentment, I'm sure, but that's the sacrifices that sometimes families have to make. And that's where I think, again, it's about looking, when you think about getting a puppy, or even when you've got a puppy right now, thinking about the worst case scenarios or the accommodations we might have to make to help this dog out. So anyway, that's kind of like a broad overview of dogs and children. It's not easy, but it can totally be done. But I think the common situations we tend to find this big clash is when we try and do things together. Because again, that idyllic image was, let's go for a family walk with the children, happy, la-di-da, the dog just walking by our side. It doesn't happen. Kids are running, scooting, cycling, playing, climbing trees. Naturally, that contradicts with what your dog wants to do, because they're like, hey, where are you off to? I want to keep up with them. So you've got your kids scooting and cycling ahead. You've got your dog on a lead, pulling like mad to try and get up with them. We get cross with the dog because he's pulling. We then shout at the kids and say, stop having fun, get back here, because you're upsetting the dog. And it is just a massive headache. It's not enjoyable. And this is where it's no one's fault. It's one of those things. It's not the kid's fault for going and having fun. It's not the dog's fault for pulling. It's a circumstance. And it's one of those situations where no one can get it right. The kids, if you make them stay with you, they're having a rubbish time and going to moan. So then you've got to put up with moaning, or them running ahead. So they can't do what they need to do. You've got your dog desperately wanting to be with the kids. You then get cross with them. If they're walking nice to you, then the kids are moaning, and then you're not taking your attention on the dog, and then they get busy doing stuff. No one can get it right in that situation. It is just not going to happen. So this is where, for me, when I do have a young puppy or a dog that needs a lot of attention, I separate it out. I mean, I don't remember the last time we went out as a family for a walk. And the last time we did, I mean, to be fair, my family circumstances are probably a little bit different to most people's because of my girlies and their unique quirks. But the last time we went out as a family, we went to a secure field. And that was probably a good 2 years ago, to have all the dogs and all the kids and humans in one place. We went to a secure field because then the dogs are at least happy doing what they want to do. The kids can go at their own pace. I'm not having to battle pulling leads, worrying about meeting people, etc. Yes, in an ideal world, I'd love to go for a family walk. God, it would be wonderful. But it's not the dog's fault. It's not my kids' fault. It's circumstantial. That's just not going to happen for me. But even if it is possible for you, it doesn't mean... And let me reverse that a minute. The reason I don't do it is because it's not right for my family. If I could, I would. But for my dogs, they need a lot of extra information. I mean, Rem doesn't. Rem's like an angel, love him. But Davey is a little bit reactive. He wants to go and say hello to everybody and be everyone's best friend. Fred is a little bit wary and nervous. So they need my attention when I'm out because, as I'm sure I've mentioned on the podcast before, every moment you're with your dog, they're learning. So therefore, every minute I'm with them, I am training them. Rem needs less training and less focus. The other two still need a bit more. My kids, down to their various neurodivergences and mental health, etc., they need a lot of my attention when I'm out as well because they find that overwhelming being out in public. So I can't split myself 5 ways. No matter how much I try, I cannot do it. So I have chosen to make sure I can give my full attention to whoever I'm with by splitting them out. It's not ideal. I would love to go for a family walk. It's not happening because I know if we went out together, I would fail. Everybody would end up upset, annoyed, and it just wouldn't be fun. So yes, in an ideal world, but realistically, we actually get way more from separating it out. And setting yourself specific time to dedicate to each individual or focus on, a particular group of people versus dogs, or an individual dog or a person. Is quality time, which is lovely. Kids love quality time. Your dog loves quality time. I mean, I've got 3 dogs and there's nothing more that I like spending one-on-one time. So Dave at the moment, and it's probably another episode I can talk about, is having hydrotherapy because he's been really poorly and he's got arthritis. It's just been diagnosed and he's having hydrotherapy. He is loving weekly one-on-one time with me because we go to the hydrotherapist, we go for a little walk up the road to get him out his wheeze and poo beforehand. So he gets a little one-to-one walk. He then gets an hour of me spending all my time and attention on him with hydrotherapy. He then comes to work with me for a few hours afterwards and he's like, oh my God, I get my mum all to myself, and he's loving it. My other 2 like going for walks more than Fred does. So Fred often will stay at home and just curl up on the sofa with me. Again, doesn't have to worry about anyone else. Rem is more active, so we go and do more active stuff together. So each of my dogs gets one-on-one time with me, and equally so do my kids. So it means you can focus on that one person and whatever they need. And therefore you feel like you're giving good quality to that one person or dog, which is really, really, really valuable. It means you get more for less. So especially talking about dogs here, if I'm trying to walk 2 or 3 dogs at a time, naturally they only get a third of your attention. I mean, that's obvious, right? But it means that you're always having to think about who needs what. Whereas when you've got just one of them, you can do more, you can train more, you can push them a little bit more, you can focus on what that particular individual needs because each dog needs something different. So spending that individual dedicated time per dog is just so valuable. And separating it out from your kids, because if you're always out with your kids and your dog, naturally you have to give a lot of attention to your children. Whereas going without, leaving your kids at home and going for a walk just with your dog is so valuable for them. So another thing, and these are like some top tips you can do to kind of negate this, why I would not welcome a dog with a puppy, a child with a puppy. A lot of people try and kill 2 birds with 1 stone, which I saw recently should be rephrased because it was quite negative to animal, but I can't remember what it was. I can't remember. Anyway, sorry, ADHD brain kicking in here. So leaving your dog at home when you go on the school run, most people will go, oh, I've got to walk to school to pick the kids up or drop the kids off, so I'll take the dog with me. Therefore, on the way there, the dog gets the exercise, doing the kids at school, I'm doing it anyway, bish, bash, bosh. But naturally, I mean, my kids don't go to school anymore, but when they did go to school, that morning walk to school is the most stressful because naturally, if you're like me, we were always late. The kids never wanted to go. Normally we'd have a little bit of a meltdown, a little bit of a wobble on the way there. We'd rushed out the door. It's not a good experience for me to be training a dog. Because again, every time I'm out with my dog, I'm teaching them because they are learning, especially when it comes to young puppies. So it's not going to be, yes, everyone's getting exercise, but what's the quality? Your kids, before you go drop them off at school, need your attention. Most kids need a little bit of reassurance or, a little bit of special time before you drop them off so that they're feeling happy going into school. You talk about the day. You want it to be as calm and stress-free as possible in an ideal world. You can't do that if you're giving attention to your puppy. And you can't give your puppy the attention if your kids are running off ahead, you're running late, you're carrying school bags and everything else. Your kids running ahead, there'll be people, there'll be dogs, there's so much going on. Your dog's going to be getting overexcited, pulling, jumping up at people. It becomes stressful for everybody. Your dog doesn't learn a thing. You get really stressed. Your kids don't get your attention before they go to school. Disaster. So don't take your dog on the school run. Yes, it's easier because you get to do everything. But taking them for a 5-10 minute focused round the block first before doing school run is actually going to be so much more beneficial. Another thing you can do is, this is weird and most people look at me like I'm bonkers, but we always forget, especially when you are a busy mum or a busy dad with lots of people to look after, if walking your dog is stressful, go for a walk without your dog. And I know it sounds silly because you get a dog to walk it, but you need to be able to enjoy walking. Again, a lot of people will like hiking, like proper, I want to go for a speed walk around the block, really get my heart rate up, go, go, go. The dog wants to stop and sniff everything. Again, there's a conflict of interest. You can't give your dog what they need. So then they get a little bit annoyed. You get annoyed because they want to keep sniffing stuff and you're not getting what you need. So you get annoyed and vice versa. And again, it's like that spiraling circle of going, this isn't going well. So leave your dog at home. Go for a walk by yourself. That way, you're not always having to think about what am I training them to do? What are they learning? Are they pulling? You can enjoy just 10, 15 minutes headspace. And obviously this is if your dog's a pain to walk, because out of my 3, 2, I walk and I train heavily. 1, I walk to enjoy him because generally speaking, he's pretty good on the lead and he's pretty perfect when he's out. He's a nightmare at home. But out on a walk, he's lovely. So I enjoy walking him. Hence, he gets a lot of one-on-one walks with me. The other 2, it's a chore to walk them. It's a training experience and it's hard work and it is tough. So it's not enjoyable for me. If all of my dogs were a challenge to walk or had stuff I needed to work on, I would go on my own. Your dog can practice being home alone on their own. They can catch up on sleep, so it's beneficial for them too. It's a training experience. Leaving you at home on your own for 10 minutes while I go for a quick walk around the block. I get my exercise. I get to just relax. Perfect. You then feel more refreshed when you get back because you've had what you need and then you can give your dog what they need. So again, it's separating out people's needs rather than trying to combine them because it's hard work. Once you've had that lovely walk by yourself, set aside 10-minute window. Now, I'm really hot on this. This is one of my top pieces of advice, is to not try and mix everything together. And we're talking about families and doing it all of as a family, but this kind of training window or training walk that I kind of advocate for quite a lot is exactly the same. It's just focusing out on one element of your dog's life. So if you set aside 10 minutes and go out with your dog without a specific goal or place to go or be, and you practice a skill for 10 minutes, you're isolating out one thing. So just like we're saying, you can't look after your kids, your husband, your dogs, your everybody else all in one go and give everyone what they need. If you're out with your dog for a walk and you're trying to work on lead work, recall, manners around other dogs, not jumping at people, it's like bam, 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 new skill every 2 seconds. Whereas if you set aside 10 minutes with no focus, no goal, no I need to get from A to B, and you go, for 10 minutes, we are just going to play some recall games. You're focusing on recall, nothing but recall for 10 minutes and having, an amazing 10-minute session. The next day, if you do 10 minutes on lead work, amazing. By the end of the week, you've tackled every issue you need, but you've focused your energy on one thing rather than trying to mix it all up. Now, if we kind of touched on this a little bit, but as I said, because this is how I roughly do it, but if you want an enjoyable walk with your family, don't try and do it in a busy place. Don't try and do it in the busiest park or go to a National Trust place where there's hundreds of other people and dogs and you've got to manage your kids and manage your dog. Drive to somewhere that's really, really quiet. So you've only got to worry about your family and your dog and not external factors. So you may well have to drive there. You may have a lovely quiet area right behind your house. Lucky you. For me, it's dog walking fields because I can just not have to worry about everybody. Not that they misbehave. The dogs are good when we're there. It's just I haven't got to worry about, as well as looking at what everybody needs, worrying about what else is going on in my world and what other uncontrollable factors are there. But yeah, you may have to drive somewhere. You may have to hire a field. But then everybody has a nice time. The kids have got a bit more freedom. You haven't got to worry about where they're going. You haven't got to worry about other people. The dogs can just enjoy. And yes, it's a faff and it's expensive and you've got to drive to it. But if everyone has a less stressful, relaxing time, then that is so beneficial. And again, this is kind of like, the summing up of everything we've talked about so far. Aim to create situations where everyone can succeed. If you leave one party at home, that's it. If your kids want to go on their bikes rather than walk, leave the dog at home. Then you can go at your kids' pace and not have to worry about the dog pulling behind them. If you want to take your dog for a sniffy walk, don't take your kids if they want to go on their bike. That kind of stuff. Just aim to create a situation where everyone can get what they need and it's not conflicting each other. And I think one thing that we are going to overlook is we've talked about how challenging it is with kids. Kids can be amazing with looking after dogs, but we can help them. And I think it's doing it when there's no pressure. So on a walk, naturally, there's pressure because you're mixing up everyone's needs. Training your children or teaching your children how to be a responsible dog owner is really, really valuable, but at the right time and place. So, for example, take your child to a dog training class where you've got some time dedicated. All you're thinking about is your dog and your child. You could do it in the back garden at home. Doesn't even have to be at a class. But teaching your child how to actually interact with your dog. What's their responsibility? How can you help them? How can you support them? How can you teach them a new trick? Teaching them how to groom them or how to prepare enrichment activities for them. It's not a task that is a necessity like going for a walk, but it's having dedicated time for your child and your dog to bond and interact that complement each other rather than conflict each other. And generally speaking, if your child is going to be a bit more sort of connected with your dog through responsibility, you're going to have a more caring child for the future who knows how to take on responsibility. Your dog's going to be really happy because they've already had their needs met on their walk and then they're having lovely time with their child. And your child's going to enjoy it because there's no desperate need to fulfill and no pressure. And then once they've have a stronger relationship, then it becomes more enjoyable to go for walks together because they're more understanding of what your dog needs. Obviously, this is where children mature and their emotional sort of maturity develops. Dogs doesn't. They're not capable of that. And again, I suppose it's really just about mutual respect. We focus on dogs having to do all the hard work. I need anybody who rings us up or speaks to us says, I need training for my dog. But you will know, because you've heard us talk about it quite a bit, it's not about training the dog 99% of the time. It's about you learning how to adapt your life and give better expectations for your dog. Rather than training dogs, 90% of what we do is actually training people, teaching people how to train their dog or how to recognise their emotions or how to see the world from their dog's perspective. So less focus on the dog learning how to behave nicely, but more about teaching people how to respect your dog and give them what they need. And that can be children from a young age, even if you don't have a dog, or even if you've got family members who don't have a dog and they come into your family, we can still teach them how to respect dogs and how to give them what they need and how to interact with them, how to understand them, how to, look after them. And therefore, you can enjoy your dog a lot more and people could enjoy your dog a lot more. And the main thing to remember, I don't really want to paint this in a bad light. I feel like I've been quite negative about, how hard it is having dogs and kids. It can be in that first couple of years, depending on how old your kids are, depending on how old your dog is. If you're having a puppy and young kids, it's going to be challenging. If you've got teenagers and a puppy, it's not going to be as it will be challenging in different ways because you'll expect your kids to do more and they won't because they're teenagers. But the main thing is separate out your tasks to help everyone succeed and have realistic expectations. The accommodations you have to make when your dog is a puppy or young are not going to be forever. It's a short period of time. But think always quality versus quantity. So if you only take your puppy out for a very short period of time and you leave them at home and then go for a longer walk with your family, that 10 minutes of good quality is going to be so much more beneficial for your dog than half an hour of it going wrong and then pulling and learning bad habits. So it's not going to be forever, but it's particularly important when your children and your dog are younger, or either all parties or both parties. And obviously it's going to take time for dogs and children to settle into a new life together, because it's new. It's especially if you've got like one child or you've got the youngest child. The elder child has always had to, without them even realising it, had to make little accommodations for the fact that they have a younger sibling. When they're born, they have to suddenly not have as much attention. They have to help out. Well, they don't have to, but generally little kids help out a little bit more. They will do things to help out. The younger siblings have never had to do that because they are the youngest, quite simply. So for younger children or single children, it's just an extra learning curve. They're learning to share your attention with something else, which is tough, but they can then be brought into it. But hopefully their lives, they'll mature together and they'll end up having a wonderful relationship. And most of these things, they'll kind of develop naturally. The more your puppy matures, the more your children mature. But in those first few years of dogs being young, or the first few months if you rescued a dog, these things, I'm taking on board the fact that separating it out and giving each person what they need and making sure that everyone can succeed in the environment is a huge way to set you up for success for the future. So just think about, at the moment, evaluate your walks, evaluate your time out with your dog. Are you trying to combine too many elements into one and therefore feeling like you can't do it all and it's not going well? What can you separate out? Can you separate out certain tasks so that each family member gets what they need, the dog gets what they need, the children get what they need, and therefore you can actually succeed in your time together? Hopefully you have found this episode useful. If you have any questions, to head over into our Facebook group, Potter Paws Community, or drop us a message and we would love to have a chat with you. I hope you all have a lovely week and I will speak to you very soon. Thank you for listening to The Dynamic Dog Owner with me, Debbie Potter. See you next time.